Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Over Easy. My name is Manny, in case you are new here or just welcome back. I am in a mood. I'm in a little bit of a mood. Don't know what this mood is, but I feel a little bit odd. First of all, I wanted to say it's the 40th episode of Over Easy, which is a little bit wild to say. We're almost at 1 full year of doing my podcast, which genuinely time flies. This is crazy. So thank you so much if you've listened at all. I honestly just do this for fun and I honestly just love it. So to see that people actually listen and watch and stuff like that just blows my mind. I honestly just say this because there are different points in life, different points in my month, in my week or whatever, where I remember that people actually watch and listen to my content. So it kind of blows my mind and I kind of forget that because I've said this so many times, but when I'm recording, I genuinely just feel like I'm talking to one person and I'm just talking sometimes to myself and sometimes just to one person, it feels like. So to remember that there are a number of people that listen and watch and all this stuff is just mind-boggling. So thank you so much for all the support. I've always loved making my podcast and my YouTube videos and I will continue doing that. Anyways, let's get into today's rosebud and thorn. Today my rose is that I went to a fitness class this morning. So it is currently final season, and basically for me, final season just means like more freedom to do things that I want. And I've been going to the gym 5 times a week. 3 of the times this week are going to be fitness classes, and then 2 times are just going to the gym by myself. And it is honestly when I thrive. Like I love going to the gym a lot. It's just so much fun. I love like starting the morning with some movement, some high interval intensity training and some strength training. And it honestly just makes my day. It starts off my day so good. It starts on the right step and I just feel so good afterwards. So I went to a fitness class this morning. It was so hard though. I absolutely died, but it was like the best way to start my morning. My thorn, I guess, is that I have a final exam tonight. It's not really a thorn because I don't really care that much. I've just hit my peak senioritis at this point, and I honestly could not give less of a care about school. And it's not a bad thing. I've already not cared about school that much anyways, but I'm just not very stressed, and that's good. I don't want to be stressed, honestly. So it'll be fine. Today my final is on business processes and operations, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. The only thing that's like stressing me out, if I were to be stressed, is that the final is 50% of my grade, which is kind of crazy. So I kind of just need to pass and hopefully do a little bit better than pass to get a good mark in the class, and I'll be fine. I don't really care that much about grades anymore, so we'll be good. I was talking to some friends in that class and we were just talking about the questions and stuff, and surprisingly I could actually answer the questions that other people ask. So I'm like, maybe I do have the hang of this, so this is good. My bud, I am looking forward to probably just when I'm done this final. This is the one that I've been putting in the most work into. After today, I probably won't have to study as much every single day. So last Thursday, we ended classes, and I've been basically studying like 2 to 3, okay, that's a little much, like 1 to 3 hours a day since then for my final. And I'm just very excited to not be so consumed with studying because obviously I would love to do other things with my time. So I'm just looking forward to when this final will be over. Also just because like the other 2 finals that I have, my grades in that class are like not super bad. So I'm just going to like YOLO and cruise through it. Whereas for this class, I didn't do too hot in the beginning of the course because we had a bunch of like quizzes that we had to keep up with because it's a self-learning course. Didn't really understand what was going on in the course for probably the first 6 weeks, but now I feel a lot better about it and I actually understand, which is a little odd and also unfortunate because when I was looking back at the quizzes that I was doing when I was studying, I realized that I understood all the questions afterwards and I was like, oh, well, that sucks that I got a 4 out of 10, but now I could have gotten a 10 out of 10. but that's fine. Let's not talk about that too much. Anyways, today's episode is one that I am quite excited for. I'm going to be honest, I did not create this. I remember that Emma Chamberlain did an episode about her pet peeves, and I'm also going to be talking about my pet peeves because I thought of this episode at a time where I was super annoyed, and then I was like, oh my god, this is such a good topic for the podcast, and I could just talk about things that annoy me because I get annoyed. I'm sure everyone gets annoyed, and it would be a good topic. So I'm just going to put a little disclaimer. First of all, these pet peeves don't bother me all the time. Some pet peeves are like just based on if I'm in a bad mood, that just automatically makes me more intolerant to these small annoyances. But they're still pet peeves. They still make me annoyed. And the second thing is that if a person that I know has done this to me or just done this in general, that doesn't mean I don't like them. Frankly, it doesn't really have anything to do with their character. These are just super specific things that annoy me a lot. And it might be my fault, I might just be a little too sensitive or just complaining too much. But this episode, I'm going to be complaining a lot, so I hope you don't mind. And that's the purpose of this episode. So if you don't like it, just wait till next week for my next episode. I'm very excited though, because I feel like once I started thinking about this topic, I was like, listing out things left and right. I actually could think of a lot of things that annoy me. So I am very excited to share. Let's get started. Okay. I'm not going to talk about this in any particular order because I wrote this all down on a post-it note, but now my post-it note is like full of different pet peeves that I have and they're kind of out of order. So we're just going to go with whatever I feel like. So the first one, this is the pet peeve that inspired me to make this podcast. My first pet peeve is when apps organize photos by date taken. And when I say that first, you're like, obviously that's how your photo album should be organized, right? Like that makes sense. But let me explain to you why I find this so annoying. So for a lot of TikTok trends, for example, one right now that I can think of off the top of my head is the as it was trend on TikTok, where people are showing photos of themselves from this year and then last year, 2021, and then 2020, and then 2019. So to gather the photos for that trend, what I like to do on my phone is I'll duplicate a photo and then I'll crop it so that it's the right size for TikTok and all this kind of stuff. But the problem is that when I duplicate a photo, let's say I duplicated a photo from 2021 and I want to use it in my TikTok, in my photo album, the 2021 photo comes up at the end where it should be because that's the most recent photo I'm dealing with. But when I go onto TikTok to use the green screen filter or upload or do whatever with my photo, the 2021 photo goes back next to 2021, like the original place it was. And it's so annoying because now I have to scroll back all the way and find it. And it just makes life very difficult. This is a very small problem, but it does annoy me a lot when I have to deal with this. And maybe you're like, oh, you can just screenshot the photo instead of duplicating it or whatever. First of all, screenshotting doesn't have as good quality, and obviously you get all these weird borders around it, which is the first thing that bothers me. But also, I can think of another example. I took my grad photos and then I downloaded the digital copies, all this stuff, had to pay for it. And for some reason, I think it was just the setting on the photo studio's camera. The date of the photo was like 2012 or something like that. It says it was taken in 2012, but obviously it wasn't because it was taken in 2022 when I took the rest of my grad photos. It was just the setting on the camera. But when I put it into my photo album, it's still there because the photo album organizes from date of input. But when I try to do anything with it, like on my Instagram or something or on TikTok, my grad photos just jump all over the place because the date is all messed up and I don't know how to change it. It's just so annoying. That is such a big pet peeve of mine, this whole thing, that I think all apps should just be consistent and just make it organized photos from oldest to newest because seriously, it's so annoying. Okay, next one. My next pet peeve is when people aren't aware of their physical surroundings. Okay, so this I think is genuinely just me because I'm a very hyper aware person when I'm out in public. It's a combination of I'm very anxious, so I like to scout out a situation before I go into it. Also, I don't like big crowds, and I'm also just paranoid of people all around me. I'm paranoid that people are going to come up really close and try to like rob me or like kill me or something. So, I'm just a very paranoid person when it comes to crowds and stuff like that. So, when I go to busy places like a grocery store or Costco specifically, Costco is the one that I was thinking about when I was thinking about this pet peeve. I'm like 360ing all the time, constantly like taking in my surroundings, who is around me, where am I, what is the aisle, how am I going to turn into the next aisle, all this kind of stuff. But it bothers me so much when, let's say I'm going shopping with someone else and this other person that I'm with doesn't notice that, like maybe they're standing in the middle of the aisle and someone is trying to get by and they don't see that, and the person's like kind of struggling to get by, where like my friend is just like in the middle of the aisle staring at like the nuts or whatever. I'm just like, oh my God, can you not like notice that there's someone there and trying to get through? Also, like, we're in a public place. It's not like you're the only one shopping, right? So we have to pay attention to who's going to come through the aisle. So yeah, that kind of really bothers me. I think it's also just because like I'm not a very confrontational person. I can't even say that. I'm not a confrontational person at all. I'm a negative confrontation person. I would rather sacrifice myself than confront somebody about something. And that involves telling people to move because there's someone coming. I know it's such a small deal and like no one's going to take offense to that, but I can't. I really can't, guys. Yeah. So that really bothers me in general. Also, just like, let me see if I can think of any other examples. Like, oh, also more so, not just like the spacing of a physical location, but maybe you're in a place where it's really quiet and someone doesn't notice that and they're just being super loud. Like, that annoys me too. Especially if it's like someone that I'm with. If it's like someone else I don't know and it's just some random person, I'll deal with it. But if it's like someone that I'm with and they're being super loud and obnoxious and just disrupting everyone else and everyone's starting to look at you, then I'm like I get annoyed. Oh my God, I'm gonna sound like such an asshole after this episode. Okay. Next pet peeve of mine: kids who say they know but actually don't. This is because I work with a lot of kids, so this is probably very specific to me, but I teach math. And the thing with our math center, how it works when kids first start and are just like learning how the system works, is that a lot of times they have to start with concepts that they usually already know, but we need to just like make sure it's absolutely nailed down before we continue. So for example, before I teach you how to add and subtract fractions, I'm going to make sure that you even understand what a fraction is. And maybe you already do, but that doesn't matter. I'm going to triple check that you know. And kids, they love to, be like, oh, yeah, I knew this. I learned this in school like last year. And so they'll like act all, just sassy like that and be like, I already knew this. Like, this is so easy. So I'll be like, okay, just go ahead and work on it then. And then I'll come back and touch base with you later. And then when I come back, they do it all wrong. And I'm like, so did you really actually know or what? And I'm not trying to shame them for like not knowing. I genuinely don't judge at all, but be honest, right? Like, I'm here to help. There's really no other person than me to help you out, and I won't judge you. I honestly don't care if you know it or not. Just want to make sure that after today we do know it. Yeah. I've worked with quite a few kids like that this week, and it was just kind of like irking because like the thing with that too is also when you try to talk to them, they don't listen. So it's just really frustrating. Next one. This next one is so bothersome to me. People who comment on masculine or feminine behaviors. So I have a particular situation in mind where I was thinking, like when I was thinking of this pet peeve, I was in grade 12, maybe grade 11. It was like during the school year, and I went to a private school, so I wore a uniform. Our uniform consisted of wearing a skirt and a dress shirt, like the typical like plaid skirt and then the knee-high socks, all this, like the most typical private school uniform that you can think of. And so I would go in my uniform after school to this, I think it was like SAT tutoring, because like that was just the time that I had to go right after school. So I would show up in my uniform. And I was just doing my work. Mind you, there's like, I think 6 tables, and each table has a different instructor, and then each instructor has like 3 students. So I was just minding my own business, trying to do my SAT tutoring homework and work or whatever, when the director of the tutoring place comes up to me and she's like, "You should close your legs. Like, that's not very ladylike of you." And then, because everyone's working and she's the only one talking, everyone turns around and looks at us. And I'm like, are you serious right now? I was so irked that day because of that. Like, first of all, I feel like I'm about to pop off right now. First of all, it is not your place to comment on what I am doing with my body, especially if I am not hurting others. No one is looking at me. My skirt is under the table. There was a table for all of us to work at. So my skirt is under the table. It's not like anyone's actually looking under my skirt. So no one is bothered anyway. It's only her that's looking at my legs. I'm like, why are you looking at my legs and why are you commenting on my body? Not your place. Second of all, who cares? Like, I feel like maybe it's because it was a couple years ago and we weren't as progressive just a couple years ago, but genuinely nowadays, who cares? Who cares if I'm not ladylike? Who cares if my skirt is just a little bit open? Like, no one can see, and you're not the one who should be commenting on what I do and if I'm ladylike enough and if my behavior matches my gender identity enough. Like, genuinely, it makes me so annoyed to this day thinking about it still. I just think it's like not right for someone to comment like that, especially if their behavior is not harming anyone else. Like, you don't have a place. Like, I'm just thinking about me right now as a tutor. My tutoring setup is very similar to the way that my tutoring when I was a student setup was, where like there's one instructor in the middle and then the instructor kind of rotates around different students. And genuinely, I would never comment on such a thing like to my students. I would only really comment if someone is not sitting down and they're bothering the people beside them, because again, I don't think you shouldn't be able to just fool around and at the cost of other people's education. But if you're just sitting there in your spot and maybe you're lying on the table or maybe your legs are spread out a little open, I'm not going to comment on that because I don't have a right to. Also, I'm not your parent. The tutoring center director was not my parent. She doesn't have a right to comment on my body like that. I was just... Okay, yeah, I did really pop off on that one. But that situation, I still think of to this day. And any situations like that make me so upset and so annoyed. And I know it's like kind of small, but I don't know. I think it's also because like growing up in a private school, an all girls private school, like I always had, or we were always taught to be super ladylike or like follow the manners and all this kind of stuff. And it was just really tiring to constantly have to deal with that. And also just realizing once you get out to society, it's like no one really cares at all. As long as you're not harming anyone else, genuinely no one cares what you're doing. So that's that on that. Would never do that. You guys should never do that. It is very terrible. Okay, next one. When people are unorganized / flaky. I am a very type A color code, time block my calendar to a T person. So when other people are not like that, it really, really irks me. One situation in the last few weeks where I experienced this was I was talking to you guys about how I wanted to, actually, I don't know if I said it on the podcast. I basically, before I graduated and ended classes for the semester, I wanted to meet up with every single person that I considered close or just wanted to wrap up with, had lunch with them, talk to them about, life, just catching up and stuff like that. So this one friend that I was trying to meet up with, I already knew going into the situation that it was going to be really hard to schedule with him because he just, from my previous experiences, was not a very reliable person in terms of scheduling. So when we set a date for, I think it was like a Wednesday at lunch. And so we set the time like a couple days before, and then we were like, okay, all good. And then one thing that I did throughout those lunches just with everyone was just check the day before or the day of if we were still good for that day. Because, things come up. We're all university students. Like sometimes you're just busy. So I ended up forgetting to message until Wednesday, like mid-morning at like 10 a.m. And I was like, oh shoot, I forgot to message, but are we still good for today? And then he goes, oh shoot, I forgot. And I was kind of like expecting it. I was like, I'm not surprised if he forgets. I was like, okay, that's fine. And then we ended up rescheduling for like a later date, a Monday night after work. We were going to go eat dinner. And then Monday night rolls around, and first of all, in the morning, we didn't really organize the plans. We just talked about the time. So I was trying to message on Monday. I was like, are we still good for tonight? Where do you want to go? And then it takes him like 6 hours to respond. And at that point, I was like, I don't think I should go. I really don't want to bother with this. I feel like just doing this is going to stress me out more than the benefits that I'll receive. So then I was kind of like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't go. And then I told him, I was like, oh, never mind. I think we should just do another day or something. And then he was like, oh, no, it's fine. Like, I'll pick you up after work, all this stuff. And I was like, okay, fine. And then work ends and it's 7:30 and he's like, oh shoot, I'm still in a meeting. Like, can we meet up at 8 instead? And I was like, okay, that's fine, I guess. I'll just wait at home instead. And then 8 o'clock rolls around and then he's like, oh, I'm just leaving UBC now. Like, just letting you know. And then I was like, okay, that's fine. You can see where this is going. We ended up meeting up at like 8:30, which is by no means late. And of course, I did have Monday night blocked off already. But, I like to do things in a timely manner. And I also go to bed really early. So it was just very hard to manage and deal with that at that time. So it was good to still see him though. And we talked a lot and it was good catching up with him. But the process of getting there was definitely a hassle. And that just really bothers me. So I tend not to rely too much on making plans with people who I know are very flaky. Obviously, I'll still hang out with them and stuff, but I won't commit myself fully, if that makes sense. Okay, next one. People who ask but don't listen. Okay, I've realized that all my pet peeves are about other people, but honestly, that is what annoys me most in this world. Inanimate objects don't really annoy me. I have a lot of examples of this, to be honest. With friends, if you're, how do I say this nicely? I've had a lot of situations where friends think they're asking for advice, but in reality, they're just looking to vent. And then when it comes my turn to explain my opinion of the situation, they're just not listening. And it gets really frustrating because it's just, it's hard to deal with the fact that that your friend's not going to listen anyway, and you put in all this effort into critically thinking about the situation and then formulating a response and all this kind of stuff. It's just kind of annoying, and it's a pet peeve of mine. Another example is literally yesterday, so coincidentally. I was teaching a kid, and she was just telling me all about, I don't know, whatever kids tell me about. Recently, I've been hearing a lot about relationship drama in elementary school, which is very interesting. But she was just telling me about all this kind of stuff. Relationship stuff at our school, things her teacher does. Like all this stupid stuff that you would tell your teacher because, you're a kid. And, I would try to respond here and there. But then, like, later on into the conversation and into the lesson, I realized, like, she wasn't really looking to listen at all. So I just kind of was like, I formulated less of a response and I was more just like, oh, cool. Yeah, totally. Conversation stoppers. Because if I said nothing, she would still keep talking. If I said a minute of things, she would still keep talking, but not respond back to what I said. Instead, just keep talking in her own world. So I realized very early on, I was like, oh, she's not really looking to talk. She's just looking to, she's not looking to converse. She's looking to talk and not listen and not pay attention, which is fine. Once you realize that, you're like, okay, just gotta turn my ears on, I guess. But yeah, I think the one with friends is a little bit more annoying just because with friends, you want the best for them and you're trying to give them advice that they would hopefully take, but it just doesn't work out sometimes. Sometimes your friends are just too blinded by the red flags in men. Not trying to throw shade, just my personal experiences. Okay, my next pet peeve is when people eat and talk. So I understand, when you go out to dinner with a friend, you're supposed to talk. You're supposed to catch up and, it's okay. Obviously, that's what people do. And I understand that. I understand that if it were my way, I would not talk at all during a meal. But I'm going to compromise and obviously talk a little bit here and there while also trying to enjoy my food. But where I get annoyed is when people just constantly keep talking when you're trying to eat. And then the kicker is they start a sentence or a conversation just as you're putting food in your mouth. So then you can't respond because obviously you have food in your mouth. I'm like, can you not see that I'm trying to put some food in my mouth? Can you just hold your question on for 5 seconds while I bite and then ask when I'm ready to answer? Is that so hard? I don't know. Is it just me? Actually, I feel like I'm one of the only people that get really, really bothered by this. I went on, this is when I realized this was a pet peeve of mine, was I went on a Tinder date. This was, oh my gosh, almost 3 years ago at this point, because I was on Tinder in 2019. So I went on a Tinder date. This was my second date with this person, I believe. Let me think. It might have been my first date. No. It was my second date with this person. And we were getting pho. So pho, you have to slurp the noodles, drink the soup. You have all these bites and stuff. It's not just like sushi where you just bite and swallow and chew and swallow, obviously. And this person would just not stop talking while I was trying to eat my pho. And it would just get to the point where I was like, oh my God, please just let me eat in silence. I obviously didn't say that to him, but I was just like, please, I really want to eat in silence right now. And that was also the point where I realized maybe this person is not the best fit for me. Genuinely, that's one of the signs that I have for telling if someone is compatible with me is in situations like that. Are you a constant talker or do you accept silence? And I think it was also I think it's maybe in a broader scenario, the fact that he couldn't accept silence in a conversation, and that might also be a very big kicker for me. I am a very slow processor in terms of thoughts and when people say things to me, and I just need time to think about it. So obviously I'm not going to keep talking during that time when I'm trying to think through what you just said. It has to be silent somehow. But with people who can't accept silence, it's very bothersome to me, because most of the time, if you can't accept silence, you're most likely just filling the air with random things. It's not like it's actually impactful words. And then it's hard to respond and not really a conversation to talk about or talk to. So yeah, it is, I don't know, it bothers me a lot. After that date, I already knew that it was over at that point when we were eating pho. I was like, nope, this is not going to happen. And, people can change. People can, if you tell people things, maybe they can adjust how they do things. But I think innately in dating, you have to have some sort of compatibility. And I feel like if it was something so small like eating and talking that I would have to constantly nitpick at, then overall, I don't think it was going to work. And it wasn't. It didn't work. So, yes. Yeah, I honestly, ever since university and just COVID too, I love eating by myself. And it's just so nice to be quiet and sit with your thoughts. I also like to try to be mindful when I'm eating. Really try to think about what I'm eating. Just absorb the flavors. I know that sounds very corny, but being mindful when eating is one thing that I'm really trying to do now. So I try not to, go on my phone too much or do anything else. And yeah, that's actually a huge pet peeve of mine. That's probably actually one of my biggest pet peeves is people who can't stop talking during eating. It's just I'm fine with a little bit of talking, but constant talking is a no for me. Okay, my next pet peeve is when people assume without thinking. I'm not going to lie, this is something that I still do, and I did and will probably continue to do, because I think for humans it's just natural to assume things. But yeah, I had a conversation with my mom this week on Wednesday morning, and I went out to hang out with my boyfriend on Tuesday night, because Tuesday nights are usually the nights during the week that we hang out and we just spend some time together. My mom comes up to me on Wednesday morning. She's like, oh, when did you get home? I'm like, oh, 10 o'clock-ish, like pretty early actually. And then she was like, oh, like, why'd you still go out if you have a final? I was like, what? Like, and then she goes, yeah, like, don't you have to study? I was like, what do you think I did all morning? What do you think I did all afternoon? What do you think I did for like 3 hours in the morning? Obviously, I studied for my final. I'm not stupid that, like, I'm not going to study for a final that's coming up. I've been a student for 16 years now. It's like not new to me to study for finals. And then she's like, I don't know, like, I didn't see you. And I was like, yeah, because you're at work. You're not going to see me 24 hours a day and see what I'm doing at all times of the day. Obviously, you're not going to see me when I'm studying. It's when I'm studying in the morning, you're at work. She's like, oh. And I'm like, why do you need to assume like this? I was kind of also just ticked off a little bit that morning. So I was kind of about to pop off. But I was like, like, you should really think about these things before you assume. Obviously, I'm not going to go out and have fun without studying for my final as well. And even if I did, it's fine. I still had like 3 days before my final. Yeah, so that really takes me off. But I know for a fact that I still do this. Like, I assume things without thinking all the time. So that also annoys me about me. Is that, I assume things and I don't think critically about them before I jump to conclusions and just talk about things. So can't fault my mom for that one because I also do it. But it was a little bit annoying to deal with, My last pet peeve. This pet peeve is only like a half pet peeve because it really only bothers me if I'm in a more solitude mood, is when people talk to me in the morning. And I'm not talking about like 11 a.m. I'm talking about like when I first wake up. I've realized that I can be quite volatile in the morning, just depending on how I wake up, how the night was before, how I slept, all these kinds of things. Just my overall mood, it changes. And so if you come up to me in the morning and say something unprovoked or just something super, I don't know, just not neutral, I can get quite mad in the morning. I can get very mad in the morning and just very ticked off. I think it's more because like my brain is very malleable in the morning, if that makes sense. So I'm very easily ticked off and not as resilient to these like shocking things. I have said before that I'm a person who does not like surprises. I'm very bad with handling things that come out of the blue. So when that happens to me in the morning, it is way worse than if it happened to me any other time in the day. I just get in a very bad mood. My mom and I actually had a huge fight about this last year. And it was literally because she was trying to talk to me in the morning and I was just not in a good mood. So I just kind of like sassed back at her and then she got really mad at me. So yeah. So I just try to avoid not talking to people in the morning. That is why I wake up so early in the morning. I try to avoid everyone in my family in the morning. And it's nothing against them. It's just more like I want to have some peace and quiet. So I feel like once I move out by myself, I will really enjoy living alone because I just crave this like solitude in the morning. But yeah, those are all of my pet peeves that I have. I honestly kind of popped off with this episode and I feel like it will come off very complainy, but I've never really done an episode like this and I really enjoyed sharing my pet peeves. These are really small things that just irk me throughout the day, and honestly, when I think about it more deep-rootedly, it really pisses me off, but in the moment I'm like, okay, it's fine. A little annoyed, but it's fine. But anyways, I'm going to relax for the rest of the afternoon before I write my final tonight, and I will see you next week in my next episode. Bye.
And I was like, yo.